Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Namaste, and a very warm welcome to all of you to the 15th Parliamentary session of the Second World Teen Parliament. Before we start, just a small reference or context to the World Teen Parliament, that what exactly is the Teen Parliament and what does it do? The World Teen Parliament has been established with a very simple vision of making teenagers aware about how democracies work, how parliaments work, and how do they become a part of democracies when they grow up. So how policies get made and how things get executed with and all around them. This is the Second World Teen Parliament. In January 2023, the Second World Teen Parliament got elected. Every year, the World Teen Parliament gets 100 teenagers who get elected from all across the world to become the members of parliament. And then one whole year, these teenagers work on world improvement. And the World Teen Parliament trains them, mentors them, and even funds them so that they can scale their ideas and understand the concept of public money and public trust. And how do you maintain yourself when you get these two responsibilities combined? Every month, we give them the opportunity to interact with very influential people from different parts of the world. Today as well, in the 15th Parliamentary session, we have some amazing guests with us who will be sharing their life stories, their experience with these teenagers, and then there will be a question hour with all of them. The format for today's session will be pretty simple. We'll be starting with our guests one by one. They'll get an opening address of around 7 to 8 minutes. And then we'll go into a detailed question hour session where our MPs will be asking questions and anyone from the panelists can answer those questions. So once again, a very warm welcome to all of you. This year in the Second World Teen Parliament, we have teenagers from India, Spain, UAE, Africa, Sierra Leone, Malaysia, South Korea, Bangladesh, Nepal, Bhutan, and so many teens from so many countries, bringing in so much of experience, their own understanding of the world, and how does that change the world around us. So once again, a very warm welcome to all of you. Let me invite the first speaker for the 15th Parliamentary session to give their opening address. A very warm welcome to Mr. Anish, the partner and global head for energy, natural resources, and chemicals at KPMG. He's somebody who has a very in-depth experience of these domains and will be sharing that with all our teenagers. I hope he gives them a small little peep into his life and what does he think that teenagers should be doing in this space to improve the world. A very warm welcome, sir. Over to you for the next 7 to 8 minutes for your opening address.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And thank you for having me here. I mean, this was my first exposure to any kind of parliament, except for some parliamentary questions, which in some form or fashion I've had to deal with when I support governments. But it is a very important platform as we realize in the times that we are. So thank you for having me talk about it. I'll take the next 7 to 8 minutes, as you mentioned, to just give an overview about what I do and also the important issues around which my work is, and that could be of relevance for the teen parliamentarians. So I work in energy and environment. As you've seen from my designation, I lead KPMG's energy sector, globally, energy, natural resources, and chemical sector, which are, at a cusp at this point of time. Because I say it is at a cusp because, the energy and environment have become almost synonymous in that sense. It wasn't always like this, but with carbon emissions becoming a big thing in our lives, global warming becoming a big thing in our lives. And as a consequence, when we are looking at what causes global warming, the big part of it comes from energy-related emissions. So if we have to decarbonize or reduce the risks that we face because of climate change, then acting on energy-related emissions is very, very important. And that's why my work over the past several years, and especially in the recent past, has changed quite a bit. I deal with low carbon energy forms. Low carbon, and for low carbon energy, you need different kinds of materials. So my team and I across the world look at those kinds of materials also on how they affect, what is the trajectory on those materials across the world. And then we also are looking at the broader decarbonization aspect, which is not just about energy production, but sometimes removal of carbon from atmosphere. And this is important because we are already above, where we should be. And at the trajectory which we are going at, we will not be within the 1.5 degree global warming as compared to pre-industrial age levels. Okay, so since we will possibly not be there, it might be necessary to actually remove atmospheric carbon. Now, none of these are easy. They're expensive also, so technologically complex and expensive. And as a consequence, what you do have to do is find the resources for it, but also debate about it and see what is the best path forward. And when you find the best path forward, then we have to make sure that we kind of adhere to that path. There will be surprises. We do course corrections as we go forward, and then but then go towards a point where the planet and the people remain safe. Today, we are not on that trajectory. Now, why is it complex, and why do parliaments in general and the teen parliament as well needs to debate about these things and find that direction? It is because, energy decarbonization is not a switch. Now, we know that atmospheric release of carbon is bad. But then you just cannot switch it off saying that we are not going to run our coal-fired power plants, we are not going to run our gas-fired power plants, we are going to abandon our automobiles. That doesn't work, because if we try to do that, then the whole world will come to a standstill. And, we have seen some of the consequences in recent times and what has happened in terms of underinvestment in energy, because that has pushed energy prices up to the point it has affected the common person on the street much more disproportionately. So the population of the world at large has been affected by high energy prices. At the same time, what we saw as a consequence of Ukraine, the war in Ukraine, is that energy security has been seriously affected. So we are actually, if we have these kinds of disruptions, and also we have underinvestment in the world of energy, then we will potentially have a situation which will be very, very disruptive. We might be staring at energy poverty, okay, which is something none of us want, because the consequences of energy poverty are very, very severe. And we haven't seen that specter in general, and it's improved. Energy supplies in the world have improved. That's why we don't feel it. But Ukraine gave us a first feel of what can be life with shortages. And as I said, some of these problems predate Ukraine. We have seen underinvestment in energy for quite a bit of time. So the reason I'm bringing it to energy is because that's what I work on, but also it is linked to the broader elements of climate. Energy itself has many dimensions around security, energy security, affordability, and sustainability, and the relations to climate are important. Now, in the next 2-3 minutes, let me just take you through ESG and energy, because you would be hearing the word ESG, we talked about all over. Now, ESG is environment, social, and governance. Okay, and these were coined in 2004 as separate things which are important for the world. Now, environment and energy, as I said, is already very important. That connection is very strong. Okay, and we need to work on it. That's what I work on. But increasingly, I've realized something which I didn't know anything about, on social side of things. That is becoming very, very important, because climate change, all those crises which we are seeing around, is affecting society at large. It's affecting customers, it's affecting people, ecosystems. It is affecting, and climate change, especially when the effects of climate change play out, they are going to affect the common man very, very badly. It could be heat, it could be floods. We saw what happened in Pakistan, which was terrible. So we know that those things are coming. So that's why the social part of it is becoming even more important in every way. And this is not just about climate, it's also about technology-related transformations, which are leaving behind a lot of people in that sense. And finally, it comes to governance. Again, in this digital age, governance is becoming very, very problematic. At one level, you have transparency. At another level, you have so much of complexity that people can make mistakes very quickly or sometimes deliberately. So you need to pull all of these things together. It is important that our future generations understand these things, debate about these things, because as we said, we are in a precarious situation, the brunt of which in some sense will be borne by the future generations. That's why the teen parliamentarians have such an important role in understanding these issues, debating about it, finding the way forward, and then actually forcing some of those thought processes, fully recognizing what I said, that these are not instant switches. You cannot switch from high carbon to low carbon. You cannot switch systems so quickly. but at the same time, we must make a move. So we must make a move deliberately, rapidly, and yet responsibly. And this is where the future generation will have a great role to play. They will carry the can, so to speak, and you will carry the can as future generations of parliamentarians. I wish you all the best. Thank you for having me here. I'm more interested in your questions, so I'm going to stop here. But thank you again for having me. It's a very interesting forum, and I'm looking forward to the interactions.
Thank you so much, Anish, for that amazing opening address. And I think you brought the carbon context to the World Teen Parliament and how can our teenagers work around it. Thank you so much for that. Our third guest for today, Lord Karan Billimoria, has also joined us. Sir, a very warm welcome to you and thank you so much for taking out the time and being here with us. The session goes in a format where all our guests will speak for 7 to 8 minutes for an opening address, and then it's a question-answer session. Thank you so much for joining us, sir. Today, let me invite the second guest for the opening address. A very warm welcome to Professor Bhagwati Prakash Sharma, the chairman for the governing board of UNESCO MGIEP. BP Sharma, sir, over to you for the next 7 to 8 minutes for the opening address of the 15th parliamentary session of the Second World Teen Parliament. Over to you, sir.
Thanks a lot, and a warm welcome to all the panelists and esteemed parliamentarians from across the world. I think today the world is experiencing a lot of diversities. We are almost 8 billion. In I think last 100 years, we have just more than tripled. And there are almost more than 200 nations. And there are more than 7,000 languages. And at the same time, we feel that the economic disparities are increasing very fast. And when we compare the difference in the per capita income of the nations, the richest country and poorest country were having a difference of 1:3 in the per capita incomes. And today it is more than 1:400. So I think the world parliamentarians have to address the issue of increasing disparities. Another most important issue, which appears to me, is an issue of global governance. We have the United Nations Organization. We have a global financial architecture comprising IMF, World Bank, and there is a World Trade Organization, Financial Stability Board, etc. And the working of almost all these authorities of global governance also needs a lot of improvement. And at the same time, we often talk of sustainable development. But unless our consumption is sustainable, even say, for example, when I put a staple pin, I think 3 times that how much Earth's crust had to be depleted in taking out of that much iron, and whether we would be able to sustain just depleting the crust of the earth for digging and mining all these metals and other things. So another thing is we have to bring our consumption within sustainable limits, particularly with respect to the non-renewable resources. Even at this moment, I would like to mention one more thing. These days in the UNESCO Mahatma Gandhi Institute of Education, Peace and Sustainable Development, we have been addressing the issue of kindness towards the world, including all the living beings also. We have been working on sustainable development goals, and we have also been working on biodiversity. So the same issues, I think they are at the core, and our young teenage parliament has to think of addressing these issues. Now, coming to the first issue which I mentioned is of global governance. Now, when we have 200 nations, we have many strategic groupings. For example, the Ukraine war has erupted just because Ukraine was likely to join NATO and Russia was feeling uncomfortable with respect to that. And therefore, we have to think how to handle these strategic groupings, various groupings. So whether each country should act on its own conscience or it should have such groupings and the decisions have to be taken like that. Earlier we had G7, etc. Now today, just looking towards the limitation of the time, I would just like to mention one thing. We had, I think, most devastating damage from the this COVID. And India had moved a proposal 2 years back to free the COVID medicines from patents and free the COVID patents from the patents. Almost 120 countries joined India. But it took more than a year just to develop a consensus to constitute a small group. And there also, the countries have not wholeheartedly agreed to free the drugs of COVID and vaccines fully free from patents for 5 years. So I think today, every country is being governed, or every country is taking its own decisions without keeping in view the global well-being. So today, I think before all the parliamentarians, the issue of global well-being should be at the core. Another most important issue which I do feel that today, large number of species are becoming extinct, animal species as well as plant species. Almost 18 to 20% of our food yield, particularly food grains yield, is based upon insect pollinators. And 50% of the vegetables and fruits are supported, 50% of the yield is supported by insect pollinators. Almond is such a plant that almond cannot be produced without insect pollination. And insect density is declining. Insect density is declining because plant diversity is declining. We are going towards monoculture in tree plantation. And honeybee cannot travel about half a kilometer in its lifetime. So it should have nectar round the year. So I think right from the issue of energy, for example, we take the case of India. We have thermal power plants. Almost we have to 10 billion tons of coal has to be dug out of the Earth's crust. And this all emissions, they have been creating problem. Another problem is, I think, regarding the consumption of excess water, all these things. So to bring, even for example, in our family also, we keep on buying things, and all these consumer durables, they also deplete the crust of the earth. Regarding social aspect, my predecessor was also talking of that. What do I feel that the problem is of family structure? Today, we are having almost 500 divorces per 1,000 couples in West. Even in India, the divorce rate was just 1 per 1,000 couples. Today, it is 20 per 1,000 couples. I am reminded of one proposal of a Japanese party, which said that in our constitution, we should provide for family duties of the individuals. So I think today that how to keep our families intact, how to handle the problem of ethnic conflicts. Today, we also see that there are a lot of ethnic conflicts in the countryside. So just to sum up, I think our parliamentarians have to address the issue of global disparities, increasing disparities. Global governance also is at issue. Global financial architecture is also at issue. And even these days, we are creating, for example, just to decarbonize, we have been using electric vehicles. And for that, we are using lithium batteries. And how we would be recycling the lithium. And therefore, we have to address our issues for next 10 years. How are we going to run the governance of the world, as well as how to preserve the ecosystem and how to minimize our ecological food destruction. So I think it is enough. And now rest we will be discussing in the time to come.
Thank you so much, Professor B.P. Sharma. I think you gave a very holistic opening address, I think, touching upon a lot of issues, whether it's society, whether it's our consumption. I think a very important topic that can be taken ahead by our teen MPs is how do you reduce your own consumption, because that's going to impact the society around you and the resources around you as well. Before we go to the next speaker, I'm very happy to share that I am also from the same city from where Professor B.P. Sharma is. I'm from Udaipur itself. So thank you so much, sir, for being a part of this session. Let me invite the next speaker for today. A very warm welcome to Lord Karan Billimoria, who's a member of the House of Lords from the Parliament of United Kingdom. He's also the founder of Cobra Beer and is also the founding chairperson for the UK-India Business Council. And he has a big length of experience and a very depth experience of things that he has done in life. We're super inspired by his personality. You're somebody who is a blend of entrepreneurship, problem solving, and who understands policy making as well. A very deep understanding of education as well. A very warm welcome, sir. Over to you for the next 7 to 8 minutes for your opening address. A very warm welcome, sir.
Thank you very much for your very warm welcome to me. And it's a great pleasure to be with all of you. I'm talking to you from London, and just a little bit of background about myself. I was born in Hyderabad in India. I am a Zoroastrian Parsi, so that means I come from the smallest minority community in the world. There are less than 100,000 of us in the whole world. In India, a country of 1.4 billion, there are less than 60,000. In the UK, where I live, out of 67 million, there are only 4,000 Zoroastrian Parsis. And I'm very proud of the achievements of our tiny community. My father was in the Indian Army. He rose to becoming Commander-in-Chief of the Central Indian Army, and I traveled a lot. We moved around as an Army officer's family. I went to 7 different schools. I ended up at boarding school at an international British boarding school in Ooty in the Nilgiri Hills in South India. And I skipped a couple of years and by chance and went to university in Hyderabad at the age of 16 to Osmania University, and graduated at the age of 19 in a degree, an honors degree in commerce. I came to the UK to study. I studied for 7 years and qualified as a chartered accountant with Ernst & Young, with EY in London. And I did a law degree at the University of Cambridge. And that's when I came up with the idea for my business, a brand of beer called Cobra, which I started when I was still in my 20s. And it is today a household name in the UK, with Cobra beer available in every corner, and also exported to 40 different countries. We manufacture in the UK, in the Netherlands, and also in Belgium. I started getting involved in public life about 8 years after I started my business, and I became the youngest university chancellor in the UK when I was chancellor of the Thames Valley University, now the University of West London, from 2005 to 2010. And for the past 8.5, 9 years, I have been Chancellor of the University of Birmingham, which is the 3rd largest university in the UK, one of the largest universities in the country, and one of the top universities in the world, a Russell Group university. And it's been a real privilege to do that. 16.5 years ago, I was appointed to the House of Lords, which is the equivalent of being a senator in any other country. I was the 3rd youngest member of the House of Lords when I was appointed 16.5 years ago. I'm still one of the youngest members because our average age is 70. There's a lot of wisdom in the House of Lords. And of course, and the difference to the House of Lords is, compared with other parliaments, is we are appointed for life. So I have colleagues of mine I debate with sometimes who are 90 years old, and they are still very active. They will still beat you to answering a question before anyone else can stand up. They're an inspiration. I got involved. I realized very, very early on in life that you've got to get involved. You've got to engage. You've got to be proactive. I was given the opportunity to start debating at my boarding school at the age of 14. And I'm so grateful for my headmaster then to give me that opportunity. I carried on debating at my college in Hyderabad. I then went to Cambridge University. I was very fortunate to take part in the famous Cambridge Union, where I was elected as vice president. And I, for 2 years, led the Cambridge Union debating team in our annual varsity debate against Oxford University. And my opponent is one of our, became a good friend and is one of our cabinet ministers now. So those debating skills that I learned early on in life at school, at university in India, at university in the UK, have been really useful now when I debate in Parliament. And the last 2 years, until June last year, I was president of the Confederation of British Industry, which is the largest business organization in the UK. And this was not planned. It was pure fortuitous, if you want to call it lucky. I was president during the biggest global crisis since the Second World War, through the pandemic and through the sad Ukraine war. And I will forever be known as the crisis president of the CBI. And I think my entrepreneurial background helped me a lot in dealing with that situation, in helping India when it had its tragic second wave of COVID, in helping the Ukrainian ambassador with humanitarian help for Ukraine when the Ukraine war started. In the CBI presidency, I got highly involved in climate change and diversity and inclusion, and also launched, as being the first ethnic minority president of the CBI, I launched the Change the Race Ratio, an initiative to promote ethnic minority diversity throughout all business in the UK. And with climate change, I was privileged to attend COP26 in Glasgow. I spent 1.5 out of the 2 weeks there. And this was a time where business got involved in the whole climate change agenda more than ever before. 60% of our FTSE 100 companies have now committed to net zero by 2050. So just before I conclude, to lay the ground for our discussion, I think the geopolitics of the world have changed significantly. When I was a youngster, when I was a teenager, there were two superpowers. It was the USA and the USSR. Well, the USSR doesn't exist anymore. Russia isn't even a top 10 economy in the world anymore. Today, there are two superpowers, the United States of America and China. And the world is in a state of flux. The UK has left the European Union, a union of 28 countries, and now there are 27. But I always say we may have left the European Union, but we will always be members of Europe. The combination of hard and soft power is very important. The UK is a tiny country of just less than 1% of the 8 billion people on this planet, but we have one of the strongest elements of hard and soft power, I believe, of any country in the world. Our hard power, we have our 24/7, 365-day nuclear submarines in different parts of the world at any time. That's a very, very strong deterrent to have. Our armed forces with our special forces are very, very strong. I'm an honorary group captain in the Royal Air Force, one of the best air forces in the world. So that's hard power is important, but our soft power, we have the best universities in the world, along with America. 4 out of the top 10 are UK universities, 17 out of the top 100, including Birmingham, are UK universities. So I think hard and soft power is important. The tilt to the Indo-Pacific, the UK has a deliberate tilt to the Indo-Pacific. We no longer call it the Asia-Pacific, we say the Indo-Pacific. We're about to join the CPTPP, the Trans-Pacific Trade Agreement. India has joined Quad, which is a security alliance between India, Australia, Japan, and the United States of America. And I believe the UK should join that alliance. And India now will be the third superpower very soon. Within 25 years, it will have a GDP of $32 trillion and will be the second largest economy in the world. And yet India does not even have a permanent seat of the United States Security Council. NATO is now, thanks to the Ukraine war, the previous speaker, Prof. Sharma mentioned, NATO is actually now stronger than ever. Finland and Sweden have now agreed to join NATO, two very strong military powers in their own right. So in the future, to conclude, I think it is going to be the environment that is crucial. I'm a graduate of Cambridge University. In fact, I'm going to Cambridge University this afternoon. Professor Sapartha Dasgupta wrote The Economics of Biodiversity. I encourage you all to read that report. He might win a Nobel Prize for it, where he says nature is our most precious asset, and there are 1 million species at threat of extinction. And trade and security alliances are important. And the three most important words I'm going to end with are this. That to be an entrepreneur, you need one word, guts. You need guts to do it in the first place. But more importantly, you need guts to stick with it when others would give up. And I've nearly lost my business 3 times. And the 3 things that have seen me through each of those 3 different times are exactly the same. 1, having a strong brand. 2, having the support of your team and having the support of your family. I met my wife 1 year after I started Cobra, and she has stood by me through all these years. Without her support, I would not be here talking to you now. And the 3rd thing is integrity. Integrity is the most important quality. It is better to fail doing the right thing than to succeed doing the wrong thing. And integrity was described by the Archbishop of Canterbury to me years ago as you can only practice integrity coming from the Latin Greek words integra, which means wholeness. If you're whole and complete as an individual, you're fragmented in front of the light, you cannot practice integrity. You've got to be whole and complete. And the last thing I leave you with is this, is trust. Everything in life is based on trust. And one of my Harvard Business School professors gave a 1-hour lecture on trust, and I will sum it up to you in less than 1 minute. She summarized it as trust being a triangle. To get trust from people, you have to be authentic. It has to be the real you. You have to have the logic. You have to have the capability, the knowledge, the expertise to be able to deliver what you're promising to say and do what you're going to say. And finally, you've got to have empathy. Are you in it for yourself or are you in it for them? So with authenticity, logic, and empathy, you can gain trust. And good luck. And the best definition of luck that I ever heard was in the Harvard Business School classroom. Luck is when determination meets opportunity. If you're not determined, you won't even see the opportunity. If you're determined, those waves that are going past you in life, you might just catch one of those waves. If you're not determined, those waves will keep going past you all your life. So good luck to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Lord Karan Billimoria, for the opening address for the 15th parliamentary session. So now it's the time for questions. So MPs, get ready with your questions. So the format now is that the MP will ask you a question to a specific guest, but any of the panelists can add to the answer if they want to, put in their perspective to it. Let me invite the first member of parliament, Varun Saral. Varun Saral, over to you. Please ask your question.
Thank you so much, sir. So my question is to respectable Mr. Anish Dey. So what made you think of World in Parliament as something special to come and talk to us children about natural resources and sustainable development?
Okay, so I believe that the future generation, the decisions for the future have to be taken significantly by the future generations, or because they will, as I said, carry the can into the future. So, not consulting future generations adequately in those decisions is a problem. And I don't think that consultations happen adequately. And the reason that consultations don't happen adequately is because people believe that expertise lies with the tenured people, people older than you, people like me and other panelists in that sense. Okay, but we don't are aware of the dynamics of it, educates them, and then participates in this debate. But there's a second element to it. I also believe that in today's world, which is so digital, so fast changing, actually knowledge resides at the bottom, not at the top. Always. I mean, there is knowledge at the top, but there is also a lot of knowledge at the bottom, which needs to be harnessed. We just don't have the avenues or the platforms to harness that. And I just thought that when I was invited to this, that it will be equally a learning opportunity for me as much as I can contribute also to this process. So even the questions you raise, even the thoughts which you have, actually become very important education for us people, tenured people who don't necessarily always have that exposure. So those were the two motivations for me to bring up those issues, talk to you, but more important on an issue which I believe is mission critical for us to solve, the climate issue.
I just want to add a quick comment that in last 100 years, the ocean level has increased by 20 centimeters. And if the global warming would continue at the same pace, we have already crossed the 1.2 degree out of the 2 degree threshold. And therefore, the level of the ocean water can rise up to 100 centimeters, and where almost half the earth would be there. And therefore, I think this is the most relevant issue today.
Sinle Wangmo, the next question is yours. Sinle, please unmute yourself.
Hello everyone, I'm Tlongmo from Bhutan and I completed my 12th standard last year from Mongar High Secondary School. I want to ask my question to Lord Karan Billimoria, member, House of Lords Parliament of UK. Sir, you are qualified as Chartered Accountant, serve as the Chairman of Advisory Board of the Judge Business, Chancellor of the University of Birmingham, and also your President of UK. I believe there is no shortcut to success, so please kindly share us the story behind your success.
Thank you very much, Tinley, for your question. And you're from Bhutan, one of my favorite countries in the world that I'm privileged to have visited. And my father, when he was in the army, one of his best friends was Lam Dorji, who was chief of the Bhutanese army. They were good friends from the time they were young officers. And it's a beautiful country. And I love that way that you have your emphasis on happiness, not just GDP, but happiness. So your question, that I've been very lucky people say to me, how do you do all these different things? How can you be in the House of Lords and run your business and be Chancellor of one of the biggest universities in the country and be President of the Confederation of British Industry and be an officer in the Royal Air Force and have a family with 4 lovely children? How do you do all these things? And I tell you something, you can do anything in life as long as you love what you're doing and you're curious and you're interested and you want to continually learn. So today I know when I go to Cambridge University and I go to my college, Sydney, Sussex, which is over 400 years old, and when I'm there at this formal event, I will meet people who I know I'm going to come back tomorrow having learned a huge amount this evening, having gone to my college. I just know it as a fact that I will learn a lot. So as long as you want to keep learning, that's the most important thing. One of my favorite sayings of Mahatma Gandhi's is live as if you're going to die tomorrow. Learn as if you're going to live forever. And the learning never stops. Even now, I go back to Harvard Business School sometimes for refresher courses. I want to keep in the House of Lords. I'm there, I continue learning. The next lesson is only do things if you really genuinely like them and enjoy them. So many people, sadly, in their lives, they work from 9 o'clock to 5 o'clock. They can't wait till 5 o'clock. They can't wait till 5 o'clock on Friday. They can't wait for the weekend. They hate Mondays, and they can't wait till the day they retire. What a way to live your life. That is not the way to live your life. Follow your passion, not your pension. You always just believe and love what you do. That's the most important thing. So learning, loving what you're doing, and then you can't do it alone. You've got to have a good team to support you. And I'm very, very lucky. I've got a fabulous team who supports me. Without their support, I would not be able to do all the different things that I'm able to. And then you have to have the mindset. You have to train your mindset to be able to deal with lots of different things and be able to switch off from one thing to another thing, and not to brood over things, but to move on. So there's a lot there. I hope I've answered your question in some way. Thank you.
The next question comes from Ishanvi Acharya. Ishanvi, over to you.
Greetings to all the dignitaries and my mates present here. This is me, Ishanvi Acharya from Kathmandu, Nepal, and I'd like to question Honorable Mr. Anish Dey. What sort of energy crisis will we have to encounter in the near future? How can we recover it, and how much will it influence our development activities?
Thank you. Thank you for that question. It's a very deep question because I think, let me just give you a little bit of statistics. If we have to balance between energy and environment and reach net zero by 2050, which is, what we are looking at as one of the goals, climate goals, in general and overall, of course, different countries have different paths, and I'm going to talk about that. But generally, that's the aspiration that we have as a planet, and Glasgow talked about that quite a bit, okay, in COP26. Now, to do that, we have to actually be 8% lower in terms of our emissions, okay, as compared to today. And while the energy consumption will double in that sense, while the global demand will double, this is the thing, because global growth is coming. Asia is growing, Africa is growing, and this growth is necessary because lots of people are left behind and have been left behind in the past. So economic growth will double. Okay, the size of the global economy will double, but energy consumption and carbon in particular has to come down sharply. And that is the balance which we will struggle with. And the problem which we have is that for doing that, we don't have too many options. We are looking to decarbonize energy production very sharply because by going to renewables at large scale, but that also is very challenging. That it's not a switch on, switch off. Only 13% of global energy comes from renewables. 87% comes from fossil fuels. So making that switch in a rapid pace is going to be challenging. There are materials related challenges. If you are going to renewables energy, then you have to have energy storage. And energy storage industry is not developed. More importantly, as Professor Sharma mentioned, that there are matters related lithium and other rare earths and precious metals, which are going to be very, very demanding on the environment and the Earth's crust, and as you mentioned over there. So there are multiple challenges to be had. So our fallback option is to actually continue to with fossil fuels for some period of time, but recognizing that that can put us above the carbon limits. Okay, so this is the kind of trilemma, so to speak, between security, affordability, and sustainability, which I talked about security earlier, that we are facing. So no easy solutions. One thing which Professor Sharma mentioned, I want to emphasize is that we have to look at every means of reduction of our demand. Because if we are not reducing demand, then just by decarbonizing, we are not going to be able to make it. It's very difficult. So one of the things which I want to put across to you is that we need to bring the consciousness up on reduction of demand, consuming much less while being better off as a global community. So that's the challenge which we are going to face.
I'd like to question a little bit that, like you said, we need to lower on 8% of the emissions, but still people are not getting sufficient amount of required energy to operate their daily lives. So how can we manage the 8% lower emissions of energy?
Yeah, so I will answer that in two parts. One part is that the large centralized energy systems which we have, okay, they themselves have to decarbonize. So if we are continuing with fossil fuels, production of fossil fuels has to be decarbonized. And if there are emissions from fossil fuels, we have to trap those emissions, capture them, make sure that they are not fugitive anymore. That's one part of it. But the second part, which is important, is to have decentralized systems which are closer to us rather than those large-scale systems. So while we talk about very large-scale renewable energy systems, the cheapest might be actually to have on our rooftops, consume cleverly, with caution and care, manage energy better, sometimes trade between neighborhood houses, peer-to-peer trading. So we need to find a lot more innovation in distributed energy systems rather than depending on centralized systems alone. So multiple things, but it has to be at all theaters, all levels.
May I just add a little something to this? I think a key element, firstly, it is not an on-off switch. We cannot just switch from fossil fuels to renewables overnight. There's got to be a transition moving towards it. And the quicker we do it, the better. But also what's going to play a major part in it is of course, apart from government driving it, private sector driving it, is academia, government, and business working together. And I can give you a quick example. At the University of Birmingham, where I'm chancellor, we have a very strong engineering department, one of the top railway departments in the world. We produced the world's first, and this came back, the railway engineering department won the Queen's Award. With Queen gives awards to universities, 20 universities every 2 years, and for a particular project. And we won this a few years ago. And of course, now it's King Charles, who's taken over from Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II after she passed away. And a few years ago, we had this award in Buckingham Palace, and Prince Charles at that time came to congratulate us. And I said, Your Royal Highness, the professor who's won this award, the department, is developing a hydrogen-powered train. And the hydrogen-powered train is a model in the engineering department. But one day we will power the royal train using hydrogen. And we all laughed. Fast forward to COP26 in Glasgow, and there was Hydroflex, the world's first hydrogen-powered, retrofitted hydrogen-powered train developed by the University of Birmingham in conjunction with industry, big companies like Siemens and Porterbrook, as well as the UK government helping out as well. And you have a world's first, a hydrogen-powered train. Now, this is the power of innovation. And by the way, Prince Charles was on the train. And so, we laughed about it a few years before, but that innovation took place. And I think that the solar power, there's going to be potential. The cost of solar power, Anish knows the figures much better than I do, has gone down exponentially over the years and will continue to decline. And similarly, hydrogen, if you can produce green hydrogen, we're experimenting in the UK of heating our homes using hydrogen. The UK is a world leader in wind power. We've got offshore wind in a massive way that we've been managed to do at scale, so that the amount of electricity consumed using renewables is going up day by day. So I'm very encouraged, and I think the power of innovation is going to play a big role in the years ahead.
Thank you to both of the dignitaries. That's my question.
The next question comes from Raima Goyal. Raima, over to you.
Good evening. I'm Raima Goyal of class 8. I am from Delhi in India. My question is to Mr. Bhagwati Prakash Sharma, Chairperson, Governing Board, UNESCO, MGIEP. Previous studies have shown that there is a lack of interdisciplinary understanding of how urban dynamics and cultural heritage interact with each other. So, what UNESCO is doing to overcome this cause?
In this regard, we have developed some unique pedagogical interventions, and through that, we are trying to link the two. Especially nowadays, when we talk of transformational pedagogies bring a change in the value system of the learner. And unless we change the value system of the learner, whether it is for social system, whether it is for ecological system, or whether it is for overall, we can say, global governance. So especially these days, we have been focusing upon transformational pedagogies to develop sensitivity towards all these issues. Another most important thing is, what do I feel personally, that unless students are sensitized to multifarious challenges, they are not going to have an interdisciplinary approach. Even just it would be a little bit disjunct from what, say for example, the recent national education policy in India has stressed upon interdisciplinary studies and researches, and that's why they said that during the PhD work, one should be exposed to multiple courseworks so that he learns about the different disciplines. Say, for example, even today when we talk of interdisciplinary approach, but what I have been speaking, almost 100 electric circuits are being created and destroyed in the neurons of my brain. And this can be studied by various thermal sensors. So now, on the one hand, electronics is developing capacity to sense the impulses being created in the neurons. And big data science is developing such products which are helping us to interpret the electrical impulses being generated in the brain. And therefore, nowadays, neural electronics is also developing. So for the social phenomena, linking it with the economics and technology, at the same time, I think we also have to think of developing these issues. Even, for example, when we talk of interdisciplinary studies, very recently we were talking of this energy. Nowadays, people are working on biological solar panels, wherein we would be having zero pollution. And even such photovoltaic panels have been developed which work on the basis of photosynthesis in the plants. So I think we have to work on interdisciplinary aspects so that we can bring out more and more tangible solutions.
Thank you, sir.
Very quick add to that. I chaired an initiative at Cambridge University called Tigris, TIG2RESS. And that was to have the second green revolution to increase plant and crop yields in India. And you know, the work that was done was led by one of the world's most famous plant scientists who was at Cambridge University, Professor Howard Griffiths. But the reason it was such a powerful initiative that made a huge difference was it was interdisciplinary, as the professor just said. We had archaeologists, we had anthropologists, we had historians, we had geographers, geologists, all working together to work to increase crop yields, not just a plant scientist. That's why it was so powerful.
Thank you, sir.
The next question comes from Taisul Islam. Taisul, over to you.
Greetings to everyone, especially the three guests. My question is to Lord Billimoria. So, sir, I've done some research about you, and I feel like you're the greatest candidate that I could get to answer my question. My question to you is, what is your greatest advice to teenagers, especially young men who are very ambitious about both politics and business at the same time?
And Taisul, where are you speaking to me from? Where are you based?
Sir, I'm here. I'm from Bangladesh.
From Bangladesh, where? In Dhaka or which part of Bangladesh?
Dhaka, yes, Dhaka. Tongi, the industrialized area. Gazipur, in Gazipur.
Okay, and if you don't mind me asking you, how old are you now?
I am, now I'm 15, yeah. I just turned 15.
15, excellent. Well, thank you for your question. So you're ambitious, you want to get involved in business and politics.
Yes, sir.
I was in Bangladesh in October last year, and it was an amazing visit that I had to Dhaka. And I was able to see that your country is rapidly growing at a GDP growth rate of 6 to 7%. Your technology is increasing in a massive way. I went to visit a huge textile and garment factory owned by one of the most successful business leaders in Bangladesh, Salman Rehman, which was Beximco, and that was over 300 acres, employing 40,000 people. And the technology I saw there was world-class. So in your own home country, and I gave a lecture at Dhaka University, I remember asking the students there were over 1,000 people at the lecture. I said, how many of you want to study abroad? Every hand went up. So I think the first thing to focus on is get the best possible education that you can get. Whether you start off with Dhaka University, which is a great institution, there are many others in Bangladesh. And then, of course, if you want to study abroad, widen your horizons, and then the world is your oyster. Today, there are so many opportunities, but you've got to be focused. If I want to be, I was interested in business and in politics from a very young age, but my first was to be successful in business, to be educated, then to build a business, then get into politics. And now I'm in a position I can do both side by side. If, on the other hand, you want to become a member of parliament full time, and you don't want to be like me, a member of the House of Lords, but you want to go and be an MP and you want to become prime minister, then you have to give up your business at that stage on the whole when you take that leap. And I had to make that decision when Cobra Bay had started. About 5 years into it, I had to take the decision, do I want to become an MP, which I know will draw me in full time, which means my business I'll have to keep to the side, and my business might suffer, or I might have to give up my business. So there is a choice. You have to make these choices, but the most important thing is to keep the interest. Be interested from a very young age from now, and have those ambitions and set yourself targets.
Thank you for your answer, sir. That was very informative.
Thank you. Good luck.
The next question comes from Karpaga Lakshmi M. Karpaga Lakshmi, over to you.
Yes, sir. Namaste, sir. This is CM Karpaga Lakshmi, and I'm from 8th grade. I'm studying in Adhyapana School, CBSE Madurai. I live in Tamil Nadu, India. My question is for Mr. Anish Dey, sir. My question is, could you please share your view on India's decarbonization plan and its benefits?
Sure. Thank you for asking that question. So India has one of the greatest, most ambitious plans for transitioning to low carbon energy. So that is something which makes me really proud. It has been recognized now across the world as one of the fastest. India has been recognized as a nation which is keeping its commitments made at the Paris Accord and the Paris Agreement in COP15, COP25. Sorry, what was it? Anyway, so in Paris in 2015. So that is something which is happening, and it has many components. It has, of course, wind and solar as the mainstreams or mainstays of that strategy, but increasingly it has biomass, it has unconventional fuels like compressed biogas, biofuels, all coming together to form a whole portfolio. In fact, recently we are also going to offshore wind. There's a large offshore wind plan also which is kicking off. So that is one part of it. But the plan also recognizes that you cannot just have renewables without storage systems. So there is a fair amount of work and initiative around energy storage systems. It's a battery storage systems, but also pump storage, which India actually has a lot of potential, especially southern part of India where you come from. There's a lot of potential for pump storage, hydropower projects, which act as storage projects. And the third element is hydrogen, which Lord Billimoria spoke about. India has a very, very ambitious green hydrogen program. So from that standpoint, there's a whole complement of things which are coming together to deliver decarbonization. What is also important is recognizes where is that decarbonization going to get delivered. And it's going to get delivered in our households because of the way we consume energy. So energy efficiency is so important. And India has a very, very sophisticated energy efficiency program, which is now being scaled up further. We just changed our laws recently to scale that up further. And industrial decarbonization, because India is now progressively industrializing even faster than before. Now it's or sometimes people see as a substitute to China because there are, people want to diversify their risks. And there we have to go low carbon. And I'm actually pretty proud the way some of our industries have gone towards decarbonization. Cement, now increasingly steel, aluminum are going there. But there's a lot of effort which is going to be required. So decarbonization has to happen in the supply side through renewables, in the delivery of energy, including energy storage systems and transmission. And India has a fantastic transmission grid, one of the biggest and most efficient transmission grids in the world, not distribution where it's actually you get it, but at the high level, high voltage grid. And then the industrial decarbonization and the broader energy efficiency program is very important. Having said that, just the last 30 seconds on that, our challenges are also very high because we are a growing economy, as you heard Lord Billimoria say, that we are going to become the third largest economy in the world fairly quickly, not so far out in time. In your times, in your professional times, it'll firmly be there, which means that it's going to be very hungry for energy. So we have to continuously innovate, find better means to do it so that we can, have economic growth, provide people for the energy they need, but at the same time, be kind to the planet. So it's a combination of things we have to do.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
The next question, we just have the final two questions so that we conclude the session on time. The next question comes from Anshika Mishra. Anshika, over to you.
Greetings, everyone, and the distinguished guest. I hope I'm clearly audible and visible.
Yes.
Okay. I am Anshika Mishra, a class 10 student at Balban Public School based in New Delhi, India. My question is from Honorable Mr. Bhagwati Prakash Sharma. Sir, the question is as follows. Tourism is a double-edged sword. Nowadays, the imbalanced tourism has been affecting the climate of any heritage site. Many measures are taken, but they did not have such fruitful outcomes. So, how is UNESCO planning to tackle this emerging threat? Thank you, sir.
Yours is a good question, and particularly, I am from UNESCO Mahatma Gandhi Institute of Education for Peace and Sustainable Development. There, we have not been addressing this question particularly because our focus is on kindness, biodiversity, and the third issue is sustainable development goals. But still, since your question is very relevant, and no doubt, the tourism infrastructure comprises of all the transportation modes and all these things. And therefore, these days, world over, focus is being laid upon ecotourism. And if we go towards ecotourism, using, say, for example, instead of using the fossil fuel-based transport vehicles, battery-driven vehicles, and all these things as has been talked recently. So in this regard, particularly UNESCO is not focusing, but as a citizen or as a parliamentarian, we have to think of ecotourism, that we create minimum eco-destruction footprint in the tourism infrastructure, whether it relates to transport or it relates to consumption of electricity and all these things. So we have to address through various innovative means, and we have to work on that.
Sir, I have a follow-up. May I?
Yes, sure.
So as you mentioned that you particularly work on the biodiversity conservation part, am I right?
Yes.
So in India only, we see the biodiversity is day by day, depleting, right?
Yes.
And like the wildlife, the flora, fauna is being hampered due to many various things such as littering and other aspects as whatever it comes under. So I would like to ask, is UNESCO planning to make UNESCO MGIEP planning to make any particular changes to conserve the biodiversity from their part?
Particularly, UNESCO is focusing on a 40-hour education module for every student. And there, endeavors are being made to sensitize the youth. When millions of students from Asia Pacific countries would be sensitized towards the depleting biodiversity, extinction of species, etc. So ultimately, their collective wisdom would be, I think, bringing some action in practice. So our focus is to educate the children or students about preserving the biodiversity. Rest the society, governments have to do.
Thank you, sir. It was a good discussion. I learned a lot.
Thank you.
So I would just ask the guests that if they allow, can we take one more question? Okay. So
yes,
the next question. Okay. The next question comes from Manas Rana. Manas, over to you.
Thank you, sir. Good evening, all. My question is directed towards Lord Karan Billimoria, and it goes like this. Sir, so how can we encourage, influence, and motivate the local people and like the correct people, like us being MPs of the World Teen Parliament? How can we influence and motivate the correct people to work and use their power correctly in order to achieve world goals such as sustainable development? Thank you.
Thank you, Manas. And where are you speaking to us from?
So I'm from Nepal. I'm speaking to you from Nepal.
Where in Nepal?
Kathmandu.
Kathmandu. Okay, I've been there. My father was commissioned into the Gurkha Regiment. He commanded the 2nd 5th Gurkha Rifles Frontier Force, and he was head of all the Gurkhas in India before he retired as Commander-in-Chief of Central Army. So I've been brought up with the Gurkhas from birth. And just recently, I was chairing the Memorial Gates next to Buckingham Palace, where we have a ceremony every year to commemorate the service and sacrifice of the 5 million volunteers who served in the First and Second World Wars from the Commonwealth and Nepal. And inside the roof of the pavilion of the Memorial Gates, the names of the Victoria Cross and George Cross winners. And there are many Gurkhas in there, including 3 from my father's own battalion. And 2 of them I was brought up with from childhood. And their bravery was legendary bravery that inspires not just me, I was lucky to know them, but will be an inspiration to us all, always. So to answer your question, it's how you in your position, look at you. You have taken the initiative to be interested in doing this. You are here. You're here wanting to learn. You're here wanting to engage with politics, engage with global affairs, and to learn. I mean, that's full credit to you for doing that in the first place, when many of your own contemporaries are not doing it. So what I believe is what people like you, it's like winning an award. When you win an award, it's a very nice feeling to win an award. You celebrate as the winner of the award. But what you're doing much more importantly than that, and of course it's nice to celebrate an award, but far more importantly is your winning that award should be an inspiration to others. Because that inspiration creates aspiration, that aspiration creates achievement, and that achievement then also creates inspiration. So what you're doing is you're creating a virtuous circle. And you are in that position now where you are creating that virtuous circle by just being here, attending this, participating in this, and being proactive to do that. And my motto on my coat of arms for the House of Lords, when you join the House of Lords, you have a coat of arms, and my motto is to aspire and achieve. And this was my great-grandfather, who was a Rajya Sabha member, the equivalent of the House of Lords, a senator in India. His motto was to aspire and achieve. So I adopted this from my great-grandfather. But I added my motto for my company, my vision is to aspire and achieve against all odds with integrity. So it is almost a definition of entrepreneurship. You come up with an idea, you want to get somewhere with the idea, you invariably have all the odds stacked against you. You have little or no means, and you just go out there and you do it and you make it happen. But most importantly, you do it the right way. You do it with integrity. So have that right attitude. And then in that way, you're in a position to inspire many, many other people to join you on this journey. Thank you. It's been a privilege to be with all of you. I've learned a lot from all of you in the short time we've been together, and I wish you all the very best. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much, all the guests. Before we conclude the session, I would request all the guests, one after the other, to please give a 1 minute short message for the World Teen Parliament and teenagers, a concluding message for the 15th Parliamentary session. Over to Mr. Anish Dey for the concluding remarks.
So I'll pick up from what Professor Sharma said. I believe that the power of kindness is not fully explored. We need to do a lot more. So do everything which Lord Billimoria mentioned, but just keep that hat of kindness on. I think that will take us a long way. And I believe nations which are kind are also nations which progress. So I do believe, so as parliamentaries, keep that kindness hat on.
Professor BP Sharma.
My message is that as a responsible citizen, as a responsible parliamentarian, we should redeem our responsibilities towards various components of this world. That is, we are part of our family, so we must care for our family. Each family is part of society, so each family should care for the society. Societies are part of the nations. We have to think of our nation. The nations are part of the world, and the whole world should also think of a living being and nature. So I think whatever action we do propose to take, we have to think that how this smallest action is going to affect all the components of this world. So we have to be considerate in this regard.
Thank you, sir. Lord Karan Billimoria.
Yes, thank you. 20 years ago, when I was privileged to win the award Asian of the Year here in the UK, I was presented it by the then Home Secretary, David Blunkett. I remember in my acceptance speech, I said, in my lifetime, we will have an Asian as Prime Minister of the United Kingdom. And it took 20 years. And on Diwali Day, on October 24th last year, Rishi Sunak became Prime Minister of the United Kingdom. And what he has said, and I have said this quite uncorroborated, is if there are values that we can accompany, that Asian values, they are family, as Professor just spoken about, family values, very strong emphasis on family. Hard work, there's no shortcut. You've got to work hard. And the third thing is an importance in education. So I say to you, whatever it is, make sure you get the best possible education that you can. Even if you come up with a business idea like I did at university, I made sure I finished my education, and then I started my business. And I always value my education, the lifelong education. And what I leave you with is this. My favorite saying of Mahatma Gandhi's, which if I can paraphrase it, is always believe in yourselves. There will be tough times ahead, but believe in yourselves, because your beliefs become your thoughts become your words become your actions become your habits form your character, and your character forms your destiny. So all the very best, and a pleasure to be with all of you. Thank you.
A very big thank you to all our guests for today. A very big thank you, and we are so full of gratitude towards all of you for taking out the time and being here with all these teenagers from across the world who are now the parliamentarians. We are trying to help them understand the world and make it a better place for everyone. A very big thank you to Mr. Anish Dey, Professor BP Sharma, and Lord Karan Billimoria for being here and being a part of the 15th Parliamentary session of the 2nd World Teen Parliament. Thank you so much, everyone. Have an amazing weekend ahead. Namaste.
Thank you very much. All the best.
Thanks a lot.
All the best. Thank you.
Bye-bye.